all my Sagittarius friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your December 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Sagittarius, I'm referring to Sagittarius rising as the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Sagittarius Sun, Sagittarius Moon, and if you have 3 or more planets in the sign of Sagittarius, this video is applicable to you as well. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. The month starts off with basically, Mars is going to go retrograde on the 6th. We are going to see Neptune go direct in Pisces and begin really those last degrees of Pisces before it adventures into Aries for the first time since the 19th century, approximately 1862. And then it will venture into Aries and then retrograde back into Pisces for the last time. For quite some time. I think like 178 years, or I don't know exactly what it is, but we also will have a full moon in Gemini on the 15th. I'll be doing a separate video for that. We have Mercury going direct in your first house. And this is significant because you have some very powerful points within your first house, mainly the great attractor at 14 degrees of Sagittarius and the galactic center at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So look to see if you have any personal planets or anything aspecting those degrees. Be very powerful for your own personal intention, moving your story forward in this life. We will see Jupiter square Saturn for the second time. The first time was around August 19th. You might want to think about what was going on back in, let's say, I would actually give most of the month of August for you, because at that time Saturn was retrograding and Jupiter was moving forward. Now we're going to experience it in the opposite, where Saturn is moving forward and Jupiter is retrograding, Jupiter being your ruling planet. So let's pull up the chart and look at some of the specifics of the month. Okay. So we see that right now I have it on the 1st of December at 8 a.m., which makes Sagittarius the rising sign. And we see we're about to experience, or we have just experienced at 10:21 p.m. the day before, a new moon in Sagittarius. I did a separate video on that, so please check that out. But what strikes me is Mercury and Jupiter are in an opposition, and both are in detriment. They are in the furthest signs from their home and having to really look at things from a completely new perspective. Mercury is retrograde. We see the moon at this particular time of the day is literally on the great attractor at 14 degrees of Sagittarius, and Mercury's starting to aspect it. I mean, it's literally the closer the orb, the more intense or the more powerful the opportunity for manifestation. When we're looking at the great attractor, we're looking at an ability to connect to the universe and literally through the laws of attraction, receive the things I need to move my story the direction I want it to go. Now, the challenge here with Mercury is it has to review the situation. It's got to review the broad strokes and also implementation. And in the opposition to Jupiter, Jupiter is all about the big picture, but it has to sort of think about the practical application of how the human mind works, how the human rolls in its everyday experience, because oftentimes our everyday life gets in the way of our hopes, our dreams, or the things that we want to manifest. I want to buy a new house, but Johnny needs a new pair of shoes, those kind of things. And Jupiter can miss those details. So here, Jupiter in retrograde is having to go back through the house of everyday thinking, of everyday activities, and really look at how that affects the bigger picture of things and moving the story forward. I also want to comment that Sagittarius rules business and commerce in many ways through the ideas of branding, marketing, publishing, writing, and now what I think is creating content on these internet platforms. So you could see yourself really having an opportunity to plant the seeds during the new moon in Sagittarius for some business endeavor that brings more abundance or more wealth into your everyday experience. We will see on the 4th that Venus, let's me go off Mercury. Venus is in the last degrees of Capricorn here. She's in a growing conjunction to Pluto, and they are both in an opposition to Mars. This is pretty significant because the Pluto-Mars opposition has been going on for a while. But Pluto was in Capricorn, finishing up those last degrees of the Capricorn energy of fear, repression, restriction, even old history coming up to repeat itself. Mars was in Cancer at the time in fall. Now, as we're growing in this opposition, Mars is much more powerful in Leo. And Pluto is really wanting to liberate whatever's been holding things back, wanting to express its own personal genius. The thing about Pluto is it rules that almost criminal psychological imprint that keeps us small, keeps us fearful, keeps us allowing other people's agendas or their intentions to supersede our own. And here I think that's further evidenced by Venus growing in a conjunction with Pluto, ruling not only my money and my possessions, but my self-worth. And it's all looking for liberation. Now, Mars is going to go retrograde in 2 days on the 6th. So it's stationing here at 6 degrees, and then it's going to start to move in that tighter and tighter opposition. Venus will move on, but Pluto, being the slow-moving planet, will task Mars when it moves back into Cancer to really dig deep into that emotional imprint, the imprint that comes from how you were nurtured or how you perceived being nurtured, how you perceive the feminine experience and the home experience. So, and that is usually the platform for how the human processes its own possibilities. We also see, let me pull up Pluto, that the nodes are in the very last degrees of the Aries and Libra axis, and then it's going to move into the Virgo and Pisces axis. So while we're finishing up this Libra Aries axis, we're looking at how we foster peace and how we foster harmony in our lives while still expressing ourselves as individuals. And when in the January, when the nodes move, we're going to feel a real shift into our spiritual beliefs versus the mind that enslaves us. And I think that's sort of the 2.0 version of this modern time as the transit takes about a year to go through. So we're going to really be reviewing those things, looking at those things, seeing how my creativity, Pisces, my spiritual connection, Pisces, my addictions to things, Pisces, how they interrupt the truth of who I am, and how the South Node is going to ask me to really go into my mind and where I've enslaved myself through my daily processes and the imprints I have and my habits of health. So that's going to be a big shift. Let's go to the 6th now. We'll see. Well, I'm going to go to the 7th, actually. Or am I going to January? And we see that Mars has gone retrograde, and this is going to happen until February 23rd. It's going to go back to, let me check my notes here, all the way back to 17 degrees of Cancer. So that's pretty significant because it's going to go almost through the whole second half of the Cancer energy in its fall. So it's going to be reviewing all of these sort of more elevated experiences of trusting my intuitiveness, trusting that my self-care, slowing things down a little bit to be aware of how other people are emotionally processing what it is that I want. We also see, oh, by the way, Leo is your ninth house, and Cancer is your eighth house of transformation. We see the wheel has changed. I was taking for granted that you could see the houses. Here we also see that Venus and Pluto are both at 0 degrees on the 7th. So this is a real strong pull, and almost like the beginning of an initiation that has to do with my voice, speaking my truth, allowing my genius to come forward, allowing my my skills to be birthed into the everyday experience. Aquarius is your third house, and Pluto is going to transit your third house till 2043. And when we look at Aquarius as the third house, which represents the elevated thinking, that higher intellect, that genius, it almost thinks outside of this earth realm, in the house that is focused on the learning of the earth realm, of the childhood experience and how I was taught, how I learned to use my voice, what was okay, what wasn't okay. The first three houses of your wheel, and this would be Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Aquarius, are all indicating that real early childhood experience. So you're going to be liberated from something in some way, and potentially completely come out of the other side of this with new thoughts, new ideologies, and new philosophies. Let's go now. Oh, I also want to point out that there is a T-square that's going on between Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury is getting to the end of its retrograde. It is about to turn direct on the 15th. So it's hovering within the degrees of the great attractor. And that focus to Saturn is really, for me as an intuitive astrologer, it is tasking me to stretch into my spiritual disciplines. That's prayer work, meditation, vision boards, being aware of my intentions and of my emotional ocean, literally ocean. And I say that because Saturn in Pisces is all about the subconscious history. Saturn rules the world's history. It's in the house of your soul's history. And this focus on it is, will you shift your belief system? Will you be willing to go to the other perspective and view things differently, which is what I think Jupiter's retrograde in detriment and Mercury's retrograde in detriment is tasking me. It's saying I need to go to the house furthest away from what I'm used to in order to experience the divinity within myself and the true powers of my own co-creation, which will then expand my experience and give me more material wealth in the physical experience. So I really believe that this is a theme that's going on and has been going on for quite some time. We will see there will be a full moon in Gemini on the 15th. I'll do a separate video for that. So be on the lookout for that. On the 11th, we're going to see an exact, almost, maybe let's go to the 12th. I think it is there. Well, on the 11th and the 12th, we're going to see Venus in an exact opposition to Mars. And I really think that with Mars in retrograde, while it's powerful in Leo, it's being tasked to be brave about my self-worth, my willingness to express myself, my willingness to pioneer in my own energies beyond my experience. So where I'm going with this is Leo is that ninth house of beliefs, right? That ninth house that naturally Sagittarius rules. It rules business. And I'm really kind of focusing in on the idea that Venus, through your skills and through your own talents and your willingness to focus your thought and your speech, your everyday speech towards what it is you want, Venus is offering you an opportunity to make money, to literally make money through your ideas, and this could be in a podcast, this could be something you birth on the internet. That's that Aquarian energy, anything to do with technology, innovation, moving the story forward. And I do believe we're getting into a place where people are responding to the authenticity they hear on the internet or on these platforms versus creating some sort of show. Okay. Let's go now to the 15th, where we'll see Mercury go direct. I'm actually going to pop onto the 16th. So we see that Mercury is actually moving direct over here in Sagittarius. When I look at Mercury's, this is the second year in a row, and maybe it's just the second year in a row that I've noticed, but Mercury's retrograded in Sagittarius last year at this time, obviously, because it's November, December time, Sagittarius energy. But I really think that this is giving us as humans an opportunity to look at that everyday thought and if it serves us, if it's actually evolving and expanding, or if it's retracting in some way. And the challenge here is that Mercury likes to grab those little sound bites and move on. And Mercury can't do that. Mercury has to stand a little bit longer and get broader concepts to implement. And we still see that we're going to experience another opposition probably next month between Mercury and Jupiter. I say that because I don't have the my January schedule, but I'm pretty sure this is where we're going to see Mercury's moving forward. And I believe that Jupiter has gone direct, but they're going to have that opposition, but they'll be willing to move the story forward. So this is all prep work that I talk about. When we do these monthlies, it's like to give you a heads up so that you can prepare yourself and your self-talk to support the story you want versus a story you've actually lived. We are going to see on the 19th, Venus is going to have a nice little trine with Jupiter. And we'll feel this a few days before, but here we see this nice little trine. And while, again, Jupiter is still retrograde, this is an expansive energy. This is still a money energy. And I think this is even more I feel like this is strong because this is where Venus has been in Capricorn, sort of planning and strategizing what she wants to build. And now she's going into the actual build in Aquarius. She's starting to express herself. She's starting to, move her story forward. And I think that this fifth house Gemini for you is going to give you an opportunity to, I'm sorry, seventh house Gemini is going to give you an opportunity to start to look where you can expand in partnerships or collaborations, or maybe even potentially working with the feminine energy. Doesn't have to be females, but could be the feminine energy. Or you could be strategizing that moving forward. So that feels good. We're also starting to feel a growing square between Saturn and Jupiter. This is going to become exact on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December. This is the second time that Jupiter and Saturn are squaring. And what we see is Saturn really representing that limitation and restriction, and Jupiter wanting to expand. And yet, at this time, I believe that what Saturn is saying is, in order to truly expand, you have to come down off the mountain, Jupiter, and you have to start to think in everyday world. How are you going to implement your ideas, the things where you want your I want to offer it this way for Sagittarius. I'm not being very concise with my words, but that could be this Mercury retrograde. I believe in the be, do, have. So before I endeavor anything in the physical world, I ask myself, what is my belief system about it? What do I really believe about the viability of it, about the possibilities of it, and then I move from there. And so that is what I think Saturn is tasking in a loose square to Mercury, which is obviously growing, but in the square to Jupiter. What is your real belief system? What is your real, what do you really believe on a large scale? I want to apologize as well, because I forgot to mention that on the 7th, Neptune went direct. So I apologize, that kind of skipped over my notes there, but this is significant because now Neptune is moving in its house of rulership in those mastering degrees before it moves into Aries in March. And this is very important because when it moves into Aries in March, it almost feels like spiritual warfare a little bit, spiritual bravery, spiritual pioneering. But there is a good possibility with that North Node conjunction that we can see right here that's growing and will eventually, these 3 points, Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node, will all become conjunct in Pisces. I think this is going to be very powerful energy shift, not only for us as individuals, but as a collective, because something's coming up that represents the soul's history of humanity. So I apologize for not mentioning that sooner. I should have done that. I'm fabulously flawed in many ways. So thank you. Now I want to go to the 24th, where we'll see the very tight square here of Saturn and Jupiter. And again, this is the second square. Mercury is now conjunct the great attractor, and this is forming a strong focal point, meaning Mercury and Jupiter together, and Jupiter continuing as Mercury moves on, being tasked to really allow my belief system to expand, but not because I've let go of something or I've released something, but rather I've learned from it and now I'm making a new choice. Saturn wants to learn. Saturn wants things that are sustainable and endurable and wants commitment. And Jupiter, in detriment in Gemini, wants to sort of throw the big picture out and go, hey, all right, that's great. We can rebuild him. And yet Saturn's like, okay, so how are you going to rebuild him? This is the square. And Jupiter doesn't always have the answers. And Saturn is saying, go into your meditations, talk to spirit. Let yourself be inspired into action. But in order to do that, you've got to slow your roll so that instead of expanding like a balloon and popping, you can sustain the expansion in intervals. That's the way I see it. Okay, now let's go to the last day of the month, as this video is getting just a wee bit long. Let me pull off a Saturn. And in the last day of the month, we see that Venus is about to enter her exaltation in January, and she'll be joining the party with Saturn and Neptune pretty soon. We see that the nodes are at 0 degrees. This is pretty significant. They're going to hang out here for a while before they shift. And this is on the world axis. So the North Node is like literally ravenous to experience the self in a brave way, in a way that is authentic to not the human construct of the self, but the self that lives within the soul that wants to experience itself through the human experience. And I believe that's evidenced by the trine and the sextile to Pluto. Pluto willing to really kill off any human fears and power and control that is not authentic to it. We also see at the end of the month that Pluto is growing in that opposition to Mars. And I think that this is very significant because, again, Leo being your 9th house of beliefs, it's about being brave in moving away from something that doesn't serve you and into something that does, because we're going to start the new year with an exact opposition between the two. And I don't think these oppositions are easy. Now, you can look back as to what was going on when they had the first opposition in the fall of 2024. But because Pluto is now moved from Capricorn into Aquarius, the energies are different in this opposition. It is really tasking Mars to move into a new version of itself. And it is slowing Mars down as it moves back into fall in Cancer to understand how important that emotional body is for manifestation. As an intuitive astrologer, and I'm going to stop my share now. As an intuitive astrologer, I absolutely believe that the moon is the most important influence in our chart. I have watched people who have very soft aspects and yet have a very harsh moon become people that I didn't think they could become because their moon is so strong. So I bring this up because as we manifest and as Mars moves back into the sign that represents the moon's energy, there will be a great frustration and there will be a calling to bravery, to allow what does not work in your psychological makeup to be transformed. So these aren't easy times, but they're extremely rewarding times. And if we pay attention to Saturn's opportunity to create a strong foundation with our divinity within the soul that speaks, the inner knowing, we will walk through these transits much more fluidly and with more ease. They'll always be challenging, but they don't have to pull us under. And Pluto doesn't have to kill us. Pluto just wants to transform us to our most powerful place. All right, my Sagittarius friends, that's it for me, Teri Hunter. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and I'll see you in January 2025. Have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year to you. Bye-bye.